Hey, brother, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, brother?
Man, it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you so much for being episode 7 on the sit down. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm kind of excited to get to know you a little bit better and kind of
Yeah.
see what your mentality and your approach is within this space.
Man, me too. And hello to everybody watching. I hope they don't mind too much. I know you're cooking and you're answering questions, and that's what it's all about, man, is helping folks get in touch with good information.
I'm really happy that you're wearing a shirt.
I want you to know I put one on specifically for this. I said to Kimberly as I was getting ready, I said, I gotta put a shirt
Thank you. No,
on.
I know, you live in Tennessee, right? And I know that you said you get absolutely insane heat waves over there, but yeah, no, I kind of want to check out Tennessee. To be honest with you, I've never been. I've
It's
driven
beautiful.
through. I've never been, but the heat.
It's a huge state in the sense that it crosses east to west. It's the longest, largest state. You can drive for 11 hours before you get out of Tennessee. And so the geography is very diverse. On the west side in Memphis, where I am, we got the Mississippi River and we got a lot of like river bed type lands, a delta. And then if you go eastward, you get much more mountainous regions. You got the Smokies, you got the Appalachians. It's very, very beautiful. There's lots of wonderful wildlife, and it's a very culturally rich place to live too. Lots of cool people, lots of cool history. So you
What
should check it out.
what was the record of heat that you guys got this summer?
I don't know. I don't keep track of the numbers, and I rarely look at the weather. All I know is it's hot. It's hot. And Memphis, actually, I learned recently there's a meteorological phenomenon called wet bulb temperature, which is the temperature at which water evaporates. The higher it is, the more humid it feels, no matter how much water is in the air, because water evaporates more slowly. And Memphis, routinely, where I live, has the highest wet bulb temperature. So I often describe it to people as if you would imagine putting a woolen blanket from the washer into the dryer for like 5 minutes just to heat it up and not to dry it out, and then taking it out and putting it on. That's what walking outside feels like. It's oppressive heat.
Well, that's what
It's
they
rough.
say. Not the humidity that it's not the heat that gets you; it's the humidity.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And they're right, man. They're right. It's wet and
Yeah,
hot.
no, I'm actually kind of interested in checking out. I guess the east side of Tennessee, the
Yeah.
Appalachian Mountains, or North Carolina. I think that that's kind of where I want to be. New York is not for me. I don't really like the city life. But welcome. Yeah, thank you so much
Thank you.
for being here. I'd like to learn a little bit more about your story and who exactly is Conversations with Evan. How did you emerge?
Well, it's just Evan. Conversations with Evan as a title actually came from an idea I had to do a show a few years ago called Conversations with Kids. I wanted to create a live and recorded format that would be sort of like Mr. Rogers meets Jimmy Fallon, because we have a lot of entertainment that's for kids, but there's not a lot of entertainment that brings adults and kids together that is truly kid centric. There's a famous show called Kids Say the Darndest Things, where children were there sort of for adults entertainment. And I thought it would be really great to have a place where a kid didn't have to earn an adult's attention, but could, with the help of an adult who was like their ally, who built this platform for them, explore things, ask questions, and showcase their brilliance. It would be a novel kind of thing that the whole family could listen to. And as I was thinking about that, I was like, you know what? I have other things I want to make content about, and I need to become more familiar with like the publishing medium on social media. I'm a first career actor, so talking to a camera is very natural for me, but using social media professionally was not. And I thought, oh, I'll do Conversations with Evan, because then later on, if I do the Conversations with Kids brand, they'll have the link. So you can call me Evan, but that's really where Conversations with Evan came from. And the idea is that though I talk mostly about cryptocurrency because I believe it's transformational and essential to understand, I want this channel to be a place where folks can come to have a dialogue, where we learn from and listen to people who don't necessarily look or live like us, so that, like any good story does, we might come to see all the ways that people we are tempted to dismiss as different are actually just like us, and have something we can learn that teaches us more about ourselves and what it means to be human.
So, starting as an acting career, how did you end up understanding or deciding that you wanted to get behind the camera and educate crypto? Were you always an investor or an educator in the space? What was that aha moment for you where you said, I'm going to do this?
It really was just the desire to create more content. When I first started, I was exploring different things, but I was learning a lot about cryptocurrency at the time. I first heard about Bitcoin in 2011, and it wasn't presented to me in a way that invited me into a deep understanding about what it really is, the technology that makes it possible. And I didn't start investing, buying Bitcoin until 2017. And it wasn't until 2019 that I really had like a light bulb moment go off. I was really wrestling with the money problem. The problem that money is the means by which we distribute the resources that are necessary to experience the fullness of life. And yet, money as a tool is designed to reinforce this idea of scarcity. Earth's resources are limited, yes, but they are abundant. And it is a flaw, in my opinion, that our system enforces a design where some people have to work 3 jobs and still go to bed hungry, and other people have more money than they'll ever be able to spend and their children will ever be able to spend in their life. It's not a helpful feature. And I was at a point where I didn't really feel like I could ethically participate in that system when I encountered, and I had my first light bulb moments about blockchain and smart contracts. And we can talk more about what those were, but it was this sort of pursuit of knowledge that helped me see, oh, these are the tools that could help us build a fundamentally different system. They're in the hands of everyday people. And if everyday people could understand them, then we could really transform our models for making meaning about value, communicating about value, and distributing resources. And I felt like I could resist the urge of to join a changing system, or it might be better if it seems inevitable that things are going to change and I'm concerned about them, then I should do everything I can to influence things in a helpful direction. And so I was also exploring content at that time, and it just became sort of a natural part of my content to share what I was learning, because I felt like there wasn't good information about cryptocurrency that wasn't oriented around what token should I buy that would help people to understand it the way I was fortunate to have received it, as this transformational new medium that humans could use to align their values and coordinate at scale.
Wow. So it wasn't even necessarily like there was a monetary gain for you. For you, it was like, this is something that I think can ultimately advance humanity and advance people's interactions with the monetary system, whether they're closed off in the banking systems or not. This was just a way for you to kind of have your own thumbprint on what the future of this technology could look like.
Yes, and I mean it's yes and because there is no doubt in my mind that I say Bitcoin again, because it's probably the best example I can think of, that it would be beneficial for me to turn my dollars into Bitcoin. And monetary capital will help me to, at least now, within the context of this system, have more freedom to fully experience life and help other people. But also, the most valuable thing I think any one person can do is build their social capital. You know, we are a social species. Humans as animals have this unique ability to tell stories and make meaning about things that don't exist in the real world. You know, the word river doesn't mean anything to the owls, to the trees, but it allows us as humans the ability to make meaning and share it,
Right.
especially about the future or invented things, to build systems like money that are so much bigger than any of us. And I really think that building a personal brand, like if you were to say to me, Evan, I will write you a check for any amount of dollars, or I will wave a magic wand and any amount of people will know you, like you, and trust you. It's painfully clear to me that like one of them is way more valuable than the other, and it ain't the money. If that many people know you, like you, trust you, you're going to be able to go anywhere in the world, knock on somebody's door, and they're going to say, "Oh my God, it's Evan. Won't you come in for dinner?" And you'll be the king of the world. And so, yes, it helps me financially, but that is a small part of like the wealth that is the bigger picture.
I like that I like what you said, because I think that we both come from the same approach where our name and our reputation is everything. I think that as a content creator, you have a responsibility to people that are listening to you, as well as the people that you are trying to educate, to get the information right. And when you don't, people get hurt. To value the truth and to value the understanding, the true knowledge of what it is that you're trying to explain. Crypto is a very difficult thing to explain, let alone understand. And look, the more time you spend behind a camera, the longer you do lives, the more likely you're going to say something that isn't true. So the fact that the fact that we, hopefully most of us, share this ability to say when we're wrong, that we were wrong, but to value the truth and to know that our reputation and our input on this ecosystem is more important than anything else to guide them in the right direction.
It's your reputation is your most valuable asset. And just talking about how hard it is, I don't know if you're familiar with John Oliver, but he did a segment on his show on crypto where he said, cryptocurrency, it's everything you don't understand about technology and everything you don't understand about money. And it was just fantastic. I was like, yeah, that's it. That's it. And I feel like if I can understand it, I'm not a highly technical person. I'm kind of a Luddite. I'm not like some super investy, day tradey, like if I can get it, anybody can get it.
Well, I think that one of the things that kind of made me pay attention to your content was probably your blockchain 101. And I think that you have this ability to make crypto very simple for people who otherwise feel lost. Where did that ability, that teaching ability come from, that communication come from?
I, when I was a kid, probably the greatest blessing in my life and greatest advantage I've had is my parents really encouraged and helped me by talking to me a lot. They talked to me like an adult. Sometimes when you meet a kid as an adult, you have a tendency to be like, hey, buddy, what's going on? You talk to them as if you presume they are somehow less capable of understanding things than you. And I think, while my parents treated me, like a kid, they also really treated me like I was capable and competent, especially around language and words and thoughts and ideas. My ideas were just as valid as theirs. And they read to me all the time and spoke to me all the time. And that made me, I would say, compared to a lot of my peers, pretty literate. This is just a circumstance thing. I didn't do anything to deserve this. I'm not some special guy, but I think I was just born into a brain and a body that made that easy for me. And school was easy for me because I could communicate and was highly verbal and understood like the nuances beyond language of communicating with people, coordinating with people. I've always made friends well. I've always resolved conflict well. And because I was curious and fascinated about performance at a young age, the study of performance as an art form and a craft is really about making meaning with people. And so I have had a lot of opportunities in my life to practice making meaning with people through a variety of mechanisms that involve the instrument of my body. I studied communication at a graduate level. I've done a lot of speeches and speech writing. I've done a lot of, rhetorical criticism, which is like the academic practice of breaking down what is in a message beyond just the words and how audiences receive it, what is effective in terms of informing or persuading or emotionally moving people to action. So I have been concertedly studying that. I've been kind of inclined towards it naturally, and I'm just deeply curious about it. I've gotten to practice it a lot in my life, and I've been a teacher. I've taught different people different kinds of things at all levels, all experience levels, but a desire to learn from and share what I've learned with other people, a deep curiosity about them and about life is my great gift that has been cultivated through luck mostly.
Do you find it easy to meet people at their level rather than overloading them with like technical jargon?
I think it's harder the longer I'm here. Like the more time I spend doing this, you would think I'd get better at it. But I actually think, I have realizations often about my own limitations because every day I spend here and everything I learn just removes me one more step from somebody who's starting on the path. And so I have to constantly remind myself that I am a beginner too. Maybe you've heard the saying beginner's mind. And that really helps me. And also listening to people. There is a breadth of perspective. Everybody's got a different story. And so you can't just explain one thing one way and hope everybody's going to get it. You really have to spend some time listening, inquiring. And, as a content creator, something I've noticed about crypto specifically is, you probably notice this too, is a lot of people, they have these similar preconceived notions on it based on the story people share. Like a lot of people will ask me, how do I start trading crypto? And that tells me most people don't want to be day traders. Most people want to make money or have security or have freedom, and they hear about crypto in such a way that makes them think, one, it is monetary and will help me get more money. Two, in order to get that money, I must participate in the activity of trading. And because I've heard that question enough times and have like a persona for the person who's asking it, whether they're 50 or whether they're 20, whether they live in Zimbabwe or Timbuktu, I can kind of say like, hey, the first thing you need, I try to come back to an answer that everyone can say yes to. The first thing you need is to understand how to use crypto well. Do you know how to buy it, how to sell it, how to store it securely, how to turn it back into cash? Do you understand what a blockchain is and what it might be used for or where it might have difficulties or challenges? If not, then, because I've answered a lot of different questions over time, I've got playlists and other kinds of resources, however somebody might like to learn, especially oriented around relationship. Come join this community, come be in this audience, come sit in this room. And then they get to a point where they know a little more and can ask, I hate to say better, but more informed questions. And through relationship and dialogue, a conversation, we can get to know each other better and I can help them better. I can learn from them.
I think one of the means of which I found fulfillment in getting behind the camera was I would try to explain what I believed in terms of the space or what I saw was forthcoming. Because I do believe that it is like the fourth revolution. I do believe that we are moving into a very interesting space and that there is something to capture, even just a sliver of it. But a lot of people that I spoke to in real life either weren't interested, and when I got behind the camera here, there was a lot of people that were interested. So for me, that even though I was doing my research and I was doing my homework and I was talking about it in my friend group, a lot of my friends weren't interested in it, and a lot of people in real life weren't interested in it. But I found a community here that was interested in what I had to say or my research. Do you ever find that the people that you speak to in real life aren't interested or they still just don't seem to get it?
Absolutely. I think that we live in an interesting moment in time where everybody has their own little family in their own little neighborhood, their own little cars, their own little jobs, their own little houses. And our physical lives, even though we share like proximity with our neighbors, I can go down the street and ask for a cup of sugar. It seems to me like people now are more fearful of the physical world around them and have a harder time because of these kind of arbitrary constraints connecting to other people. There are other reasons for this too, but I think the internet is a more neutral space where proximity doesn't matter and where social algorithms make it easy to connect with people around shared interests or values. If you come to my channel, it's probably because TikTok knows you're interested in learning about crypto, and so it serves you one of my videos. And when you hear me talk about crypto, we have a connection. Even if I didn't vote the same way as you, even if I don't speak your language, there is something we share, and that bond and the ease with which you can navigate. I have a whole library of content, I have whatever. That makes it somewhat easier to form relationships. And so it's a bittersweet thing. On one hand, we are isolated and crave connection and cannot find it where we live. But on the other hand, we have an unprecedented opportunity to go onto this space, the internet, and find people that we can start building those relationships and that concept of community with. So it's something I definitely think. And I don't know. It's tough because, has this ever happened to you? I have like a bunch of crypto stuff. I have a shirt that says, "My mom thinks I work at Bitcoin." And somebody comes up to me in the grocery store and they say, "Oh, Bitcoin, huh? Should I buy it?" I don't have time at the checkout line to like give you the whole conversation. So what I often say is like, should you buy it? Do you know how to use crypto? No. If not, I help people understand this all the time. There's a lot of scams and schemes out there. Like, here's my scan. Come, have a conversation with me, kind of thing. It's tough to have that conversation with people at the grocery store or the bank. Like, you feel that too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's even tough within this own system, within our own communities, because you can talk about a project that you maybe find really exciting. And someone, no matter how many times you say it's not financial advice, somebody will take your research and they will kind of decide that this is going to be okay. Well, since he said it, I'm going to go with it. But everybody has a different exit plan. Everyone has a different means of storage. Not everyone is going to come out the same way that they came in. So even within the community, I think a lot of people try to jump into stuff that they don't necessarily, it's almost like they want to use you as a shortcut. And that's exactly what we are. We are shortcuts, right? All the research, all the knowledge, we are here to present it to people and to teach them in a way that hopefully they don't have to go through the failures that you and I did. But even within our own communities, I think that people still use us too much as a shortcut. And no matter how many times you say it's not financial advice, please do your own research. A lot of people, they still won't do it, even if they are in this space.
Do you know how I have found a way to circumvent that? And it may be novel, it may not be repeatable, but I I don't use that phrase. I never say not financial advice. And the reason is because in my experience, when somebody says that phrase, it usually is following something they've said that is financial advice. And so it prompts me to be mindful and thoughtful about how and what I'm sharing. And really the truth is that while it would be tempting for me to say, like, just go buy Bitcoin, buy it at this time, don't buy it, like I could say that. There's not it's a give a man to fish versus teach a man to fish thing. And again, I think my reputation is my most valuable asset. So I never want to say something that somebody can come back and be like, well, you said this, I don't want to say something that's going to cause somebody to have a problem with me, learning from me or with me in the future. I'm here to build allies. We're all together. And the other thing is, and I mean, this is just, silly, but like all the regulators I know, I don't know a single person who would be like, yeah, he did say not financial advice. He's good. You know what I mean? Like it's just not a defense in a court of law. I would rather help somebody arrive at the point where they are not asked. I teach them not to ask for that. I let them know that, yeah, I have a lot of valuable information to share that I have learned through experience, and you can take a shortcut by spending time together with me. It'll be a lot of fun, but you are not going to be as successful if you ask me what to buy when, because what if I die and you can't ask me when to sell? I reason with them to that point. And if they don't see it, that's fine. Sometimes there is a pearl of great price buried in the mud, and the fact that it's in the mud keeps somebody from doing the work to dig it out. And that's okay. It's not my job to fight them on it. And I shouldn't be tempted, therefore, to, divulge it to them and try to throw a pearl at a person who might not be ready to receive it. But I find that not saying things like that actually helps me in that goal. And people spend more time with me and go farther. I think they get more from our relationship. And I certainly do.
Yeah.
Because, it feels like customer service sometimes when you get on a live and people are like, thoughts on this, thoughts on this, thoughts on this. And you're like, what am I, dude?
And it's like running a business with terrible pay, but you're not in it for the money. You're there kind of for the personal growth of others. And I think that one of maybe the hardest things of getting behind the camera and actually trying to educate people is the means of which you try to articulate your message. Some people, you may say things one way, and people may take it one way, or some won't take it the other way. Learning how to speak and continuing to learn how to speak as someone who gets behind the camera, I think, is just as important as the research that you are presenting to these people.
I agree.
So was it your acting career? How did you develop this communication? Was it just through repetition of private conversations, or did you actually take a course for communication? And are you still learning how to articulate yourself?
Of course, I'm absolutely still learning. And I think the experience that I've had, if you're not familiar, for folks listening, there is a sort of phenomenon called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which causes people who encounter enough information to be informed about a topic to think they know more about it than they do. And then the more expertise, experience, and mastery someone acquires, the more they realize the space they are attempting to master is broad, and they could not possibly know it all. So they become not less confident, but just more self-aware about their own limits, about the vastness of the knowledge. So that's a real skill, and a real asset to anybody who endeavors to be a teacher. But I studied acting, which is all about, first, usually text. It's about the instrument of your body. So I have a pretty advanced awareness of how to use this instrument in a space, whether that's a physical space in front of people on a stage, in an intimate space like a one-on-one conversation, and it could be a virtual space like this. It also, beyond spaces, you have to understand that any message is all about the medium. There are different advantages and disadvantages in reaching someone through writing, in reaching someone through an essay, through a tweet, through a book, through an audio book. There is the instrument of your body, the instrument of your voice, the tool of language, the tool of gesture, Nonverbal communication is very important. So acting, it teaches a lot of those lessons. And mostly it just gives you a laboratory to practice your awareness. And especially if you have good teachers, then they can give you helpful feedback about what works, what doesn't, because we're all trapped inside this body. We might stand in front of a mirror and think we know how we look, but it really is a very different. You have to really cultivate the ability to evaluate yourself, and you need feedback from other people because you will never do it perfectly. And the other thing is, I've spent a tremendous amount of time writing and rehearsing and performing speeches. I was a competitor in an activity called forensics, which is like competitive speech and debate and theater. And I have absolutely spent 10,000, probably several 10,000 hours writing and delivering in a competitive situation, speeches in front of audiences of all sizes, of all topics. Some of them are persuasive speeches that you like write and source and deliver. Some of them are impromptu speeches where you might have a quotation on a note card and you flip it over and you've got 7 minutes to make up a speech, deliver it, and get the hell out of there. Exercises like that are not part of most people's education, but they really prepare you for, if somebody says, Evan, I need you to give a pitch, you've got 30 seconds. Or Evan, I need you to give a presentation, you've got 60 minutes. I know exactly how long that is. I can speak for that long and make it sound like I rehearsed it. So that is all skills. Anybody can do that by practicing those things. But it starts with language or some other medium of communication. You know, dancers can be very articulate and very precise in their ability to communicate and send a feeling from here to there so that the same meaning hits you that originates in their heart without any words at all. Really. And I would say for anybody who wants to become good at communicating, the first part is awareness. Practice a lot of different methods. Find one that is easy for you or that you are curious about and interested in, because I'm not as interested in tweeting as I am in sitting in front of a camera and talking to people as if we were here together in person. Knowing that makes it easier for me to sit down at my desk every day and do TikTok videos, for example. Knowing that I don't want to spend a ton of time editing makes it easier for me to choose TikTok as my native place over YouTube or over documentary films. And that awareness, it compounds over time until your practice, your repetitions, and your audience, you know, that gives you feedback has grown. It's a flywheel. I'm sorry, that was kind of a rambly answer, but does it give you a picture of you know, the training, as it were?
It's almost fascinating because I think a lot of people speaking is almost like it's almost natural to them to some extent. They do it without actually thinking that more goes into it. It's almost blinking or breathing. They could speak without necessarily even realizing that this is something that they can add to it or add value or continue to learn even well into their adult life.
Yes.
So I think that communication, adding to that that knowledge of it is something that most people probably don't ever continue to teach themselves.
Can I interject just to say, if you wanted to start and didn't know where, I would say watch a speech or a movie performance or something you consider to be great. Great in terms of it moves you, great in terms of it helped you understand something, great in terms of a lot of people pay a lot of attention to it. And then ask yourself why. Contrast it with something that's not effective and ask why. Why is this more effective than that? And you'll start to notice that there are different styles and patterns that emerge that you can apply to your own speaking. Maybe you're not someone like me who has a big body and a big voice and fills a room with a gesture. I have a friend named Pat who's a marvelous speaker and so charismatic. He's about 4 feet tall. He speaks like he's got water on his lungs because he has congenital disabilities. And like he doesn't hear well. So his tools are totally different than mine. His charisma comes more from pausing or using gesture and, you know, and I don't have to do that sort of stuff. So seeing what is effective, asking yourself why, and then asking yourself what might work for me is a good way to do it. And having somebody around you, like even if it's not an expert, a friend that you can bounce those ideas off of. Better if it's an expert, better if it's a teacher who can be like, now here's why this is effective and that's not as effective. But you can start right now. And then you can try to apply those things for yourself the next time you have a conversation.
A lot of self-reflecting and self-criticism that has to go into it. And sometimes people are almost a little nervous to look a little bit into their inefficiencies And like that personal growth zone is almost uncomfortable for most. They like the
Yes.
comfort zone, and anytime that they have to go into an area where they feel uncomfortable, that's probably where you should be because that is the zone where you do grow. So most people
Amen, brother.
they tend to shy away from the personal growth zone and they want to stay in the comfort zone. But self reflecting sounds like it's absolutely a crucial key in order for you to add to that skill.
Yeah, and I would just encourage people by saying, I think it was Hemingway who said, there is nothing noble about being superior to your fellow man, only being superior to your former self. Remembering that it's not about, oh, Evan did this thing and it was so good and it got a million views, whatever. You are worried about, did I do more? Did I do better? Did I give better effort than I could have yesterday? And orienting yourself around that will be a much more helpful compass to your progress.
Okay, I'd like to jump into something with you. And I think that this is probably one of your strong suits that definitely drawn me to your content. Um, could you start to me with blockchain 101 for the people that are listening? Maybe give me a general overview of what blockchain is, what crypto is, what wallets is, and without overloading them with that technical jargon. Teach me
Yep.
something, please.
Okay. So a lot of people think that crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin, Web3, the technologies that make it work are about money, but really they are new tools that will help us build a new version of the internet where instead of relying on big companies or in our offline lives, instead of relying on governments, banks, and other powerful middle people, we, as the users of a system, whether it's language or money that matters to us, can truly own that information for the first time. If I was in a conversation, I would pause there and I would just say, does that make sense? And usually someone will say, yeah, but how does Bitcoin have value or something like that? And I'll say, we'll get to that. You know, there's an order of the information. But I would pause there and I would say, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
How does Bitcoin add value to that?
That's a great question.
We'll go
Let
with
me
it.
explain more about how it works, and then we can talk about where it gets its value from. The crypto in the word cryptocurrency stands for cryptography. And if you're not familiar with that, it just means using math to ensure only the person you intend can understand a message. You know, if I use a secret code and send it to my friend and tell them how to unencrypt it, then they can read it and nobody else can. Uh, the same way that we might send a message to our friend, we can use cryptography to share information about who owns a piece of digital information. That is the core technology that makes Bitcoin work. Right now, those middle people that I mentioned, those banks, those governments who do things like keep your vote secure or make sure your social security number doesn't get exposed, they rely on all kinds of people who might be tempted to reveal the information, who could make a sloppy mistake, or just generally wouldn't do it as efficiently as a calculator. When we use cryptography to protect information and share information like money, then we can rely on computers to do it the way a calculator does math. And the other thing I would tell them that makes cryptocurrency particularly work is that unlike the middle people we rely on to facilitate commerce in our lives, to facilitate entertainment, to govern us, cryptocurrency is made possible by allowing anybody, anywhere, to contribute their computers, their machines, to be those calculators of sharing and encrypting information. And it's done in such a way that everybody can see what is happening and would know in an instant if one of those people was breaking the rules we all agreed to. I might pause there again and say, can I help you with an example? Because this is kind of heady already. And they'd usually say like, yeah. And I would say, an example I like to use is like, if you had a group of friends who all went to dinner together regularly, then you might sometimes decide that it's easier for one person to pick up the bill and you'd settle the bill later, right? And they'd say, yeah, I've done that before. Like with Venmo? Yeah, exactly. And I would say, that's well and good. But when you use Venmo, sometimes you got to pay a fee. Sometimes they put a hold on your account. Maybe your friend doesn't have a Venmo account. Maybe they're uncomfortable with the process of signing up for Venmo and giving them their ID. There are all kinds of reasons why that may be an inefficient system for as easy as it is. And if you wanted to withdraw the money to your bank, they might put a hold on it. They might, or if you wanted to settle your debts by sending somebody money through Western Union, they're going to take a big cut. Your friend's got to show their ID. They got to stand in a line. All those things are really inconvenient. But what if we agreed on rules about the money we had and could contribute it to a pot that we could use to pay for our different dinner expenses, and it would assign and track who contributed what? If we had a computer that could do that the way a calculator did math, that would be really helpful, especially if we didn't need to rely on anybody else to do it. And I would say that's the way Bitcoin functions. And it's not just one computer or one calculator that keeps up with the record of Bitcoin. It's many computers. And in fact, anybody can contribute their computer to it. And this may surprise you, I would say, but Bitcoin doesn't physically exist. I'm getting to the part where it makes sense for them to ask what makes it valuable. Bitcoin doesn't physically exist. In fact, Bitcoin is just a record of who owns or owes what. And when somebody sends somebody else Bitcoin, what they're doing is interacting with that computer in the middle and asking it to reassign some of the value we've agreed to share. If I send 10 Bitcoin to Blockchain Bully, I don't physically move anything. There's not a little green man in a computer who prints some digital information. What happens is that calculator checks that I have Bitcoin to send. If I do, it reassigns ownership of that Bitcoin from my account to Blockchain Bully's account. Nothing is transferred. A ledger is updated. And as more people join the Bitcoin network, their computers also participate in checking so that we can keep each other honest, and it becomes hard for one person with a lot of power to fool everybody else. In fact, the Bitcoin network has over 60,000 computers doing this work. So to steal from one of them, you'd have to compromise most of them. Unlike a bank vault where the cash is physically sitting there, where you'd have to dupe one guard or pass one vault door, imagine breaking into 10,000 vaults that don't physically exist. And then if you took the money out by reassigning it to someone else, all of these bank vaults would check each other to know that you didn't have permission to do that and would stop it before it ever happened. And because they're computers who just execute code the way a calculator does math, they can't be bribed. They won't make a sloppy mistake. They don't need to sleep. You don't have to pay them more on holidays. They don't require training. They can't be dishonest to you. And anybody, because it's public, can check that it's working as it should, that some of us haven't conspired against the rest of us. And then I'll tell them things like, and if somebody managed to do that, we could all come together democratically and vote to reset it because it's just a ledger, like your checkbook, but a checkbook that a lot of people share. And wouldn't that be a better way to manage money or other information that matters to us rather than relying on a government or, because a lot of people can say yes to that. You might be a Democrat, you might be a Republican, but you probably agree the government has too much power or whatever. I try to find little things along the way that people can nod their heads yes to say to start reorienting themselves from this idea that it's not for me to thinking, oh yeah, I'd like that. That works. I get it. And I go back and forth with them. I actually had to have this conversation with one of my uncles. He's in his 60s. He lives in a rural Michigan town. He's a very conservative fellow, and he didn't understand what made Bitcoin valuable. And that's where we started. We started talking about it, and we had about an hour and a half to do it because I think really having this conversation with somebody start to finish, it takes about an hour and a half to get through all their questions, to let them say, I didn't understand this part. I didn't understand that part. And it can be difficult. I think a lot of people watching us want to know, how can I have that conversation? You've got to get experience answering all the little questions people ask. They'll ask, what gives it value? We can get there. They'll ask, well, how is it secured? We can get there. I think starting with cryptography, starting with private keys by explaining reassignment of ownership. I think starting with smart contracts with an analogy like the calculator that functions automatically, that can't lie, or starting with something they understand lets you introduce a concept that they can grasp And then you can go back and say, that piece of computer code is called a smart contract. You'll hear that word a lot in crypto, but it just means computer code that functions the way a calculator does math to fulfill some kind of middle service we would otherwise rely on a person to do. You know what I mean? I feel like that's a helpful place to pause because I don't want to go into the whole 90-minute conversation, but I want people to start to see how building common ground, helping people grasp a concept, those are the keys. And welcoming their skepticism. Don't get flustered. If you can't explain something, that's okay.
Somebody who is grasping exactly what you're throwing down, they may ask you, so at the very basic, cryptography is where we put trust in a code rather than trust in a central authority to verify information. And that type of information can be anything between payments to voting to data. Cryptography is putting trust in the code rather than the people who are working behind the desk that need manual verification.
I would clarify it a little. I would say it is putting trust in information that you can verify. The thing about the code that makes it trustable is that it's available publicly. I'm not a coder, but the same way I can look up the address for a restaurant on Google, I have learned the skill set, and you can too, to look up this computer code and either get in touch with, the community of experts that maintain it, or use GPT to ask a back and forth question about what it does. There are enough ways to verify it, but that's the key. It's not that it's computer code, because computer code can be, hacked or bugged or whatever. It's that it can be verified, and anyone without any super special knowledge can do it.
So I understand, but what I'm asking you is, we're almost putting this trust into the computerized aspect of this information rather than leading it, letting our government doing it or letting our banks do it. We're putting the trust in a pre-coded computer system, and that information is going to be secured and stored as long as we trust the code or the decentralized computers around the world that are verifying it. As long as we trust the code, that's not a code that could be corrupted. And that information that is on on those ledgers could be anything from voting to data to medical records. This is any type of information that has the protection and the security of the ledgers. So we're putting in the trust of the computers rather than the trust of people.
Kind of. I would use another example. I would say, you're familiar with voting, right? And they'd probably say yes. I would say, the way we do voting now is kind of like the government has a box that you can't see inside. And it gives every person a slip of paper. They write their choice on the paper and they put it in this box. And the government we all trust counts it somewhere else, somewhere secure. But we're putting a lot of trust in them because we can't see inside the box. What I'm proposing when I talk about blockchains and crypto is, what if there was a box that was totally transparent? And instead of watching you personally walk up to the box, I could just see that one of the unique citizens of our town walked up to the box and put a vote inside. I don't necessarily know who it was, but I know that that vote is tied to a person in our town. I have certainty for that. We can talk about the details of how it happens, but for now you got to take it on faith that this is how it works. You can see inside the box. And sure, somebody could reach their hand into the box and take some votes out or try to add more votes in. But what the computer code is doing is making sure that each person is matched with a unique identifier, so that if somebody tries to make two, it won't work. If somebody tries to change one, it won't work. And the other thing, you mentioned decentralization, and that can be a tricky word. Let me try to explain it by saying, instead of just one box, let's say it's a magic box, and it lives in 60,000 different places all over the world. Now, only our friends and villagers, can use it. And this is maybe like the internet, we might be part of a shared network all around the world. And so we might have these boxes all around the world. And whenever one vote is dropped in by a verified member, every box updates as if by magic. And in order to compromise one of them, you'd have to compromise all of them, which means you'd have to know where they are. You'd have to be able to break in without anybody noticing. And then all these magic boxes that everyone can see into, that can talk to each other, they'd have to all fail. And even if they failed, like let's say the magic stopped working, like the internet went out or the power went out, how are we going to use cryptocurrency if electricity goes away or if the internet goes away? Well, first of all, we're going to have much bigger problems than that because your grocery store and your hospital won't work, and everybody in the world will have a vested interest in fixing that. But the cool thing about these magic boxes or these computers that are part of a decentralized blockchain network is that even if all of them went offline, when one of them came back online, and then the others came back online, because they can talk to each other and because we can give input, because it's our network, not just any one CEO company's network, we could all decide which record of the votes was the best or the longest or the most accurate and decide to resume our democracy from that point. It's a much more robust, what I would hope to get them to understand is like, it's a much more, even though there are some technical components, the magic, whatever, that we can get to, that you have to take on faith. All of this is verifiable. And I just want to start with, wouldn't that be a better, fairer way to manage information that matters to us? And probably easier too. And they say, yeah. And they say, what about the environmental cost? Or what about this? Or what about that? But we'd get to it.
It's amazing you did that in like 5 minutes or so. You broke down blockchain 101 with that entire playlist you did in about 5 minutes that anybody at any level was able to sit there and comprehend. And you brought it to a real world applications.
Thank you.
Great. I'd like to ask you a little bit deeper into your belief systems. You said that crypto is more than just currency to you. Can you explain what your perspective is on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So crypto is going to be so much more than currency, the way your smartphone does so much more than calls. Like, to call this a phone, it makes sense because it evolved from a thing that called, but this is a supercomputer in my pocket. It's got a calculator, it's got a web browser, I can run a business from this, I can create art from this. And similarly, cryptocurrency is a medium. When I say medium, I mean a container that people can use to align their values and coordinate at scale. Language is a medium. Money is a medium. And every medium has novel, meaning totally new and different from any other medium, forms with which meaning can be made. In the medium of language, the forms are letters, words, sounds, symbols of shared value, right? And in the medium of blockchain or crypto, the tools are tokens, smart contracts, protocols, decentralized networks, and like electricity or like language, the technologies that make cryptocurrency possible are general purpose technologies. And though money is the most notorious use case for crypto now, cryptocurrency, the same way you can use a piece of paper to print a bill, to draw a painting, to fold up into origami, or use as the coaster for your coffee cup, tokens give us novel forms to make meaning about value, about identity, about stories that will help people to just rely less on a need to trust each other, so that in other places they can trust each other more.
You've also said that wealth isn't necessarily about money. So how would you define wealth for yourself?
I think wealth is the ability to fully experience life. Thoreau said that. Henry David Thoreau said that.
Walk me through it.
And I think most people would be willing to agree that food is necessary, water is necessary, shelter is necessary. There are some things that without which you will die. Money, though it is the means by which most people in the world right now accumulate those things, or it makes accumulating those things within the confines of the system we've built easier, it is not the only, or I would argue the best way to distribute those resources and give people the means to fully experience life. I think it is arbitrary. It is one way that things developed when people found it was easy, like language. And there are words in our languages that we have decided no longer serve us and are not helpful for one reason. They're vulgar, they're whatever, they're unclear. Languages evolve. So too do other forms of making meaning. And I think the money system, which is controlled by elected and appointed officials, which all of us use, but which not all of us have equal say about, and which keeps some people from experiencing the fullness of life. I think the mother who holds up a grocery store to get money and formula for her children is not a bad person. I think she's probably desperate. I think most people, if they had food, water, shelter, meaningful relationships, safety, would probably not choose to go into a bank and risk their lives or kill some other person to get something into a bank and risk their lives or kill some other person to get something like that. And therefore, I think as people who have so many great inventions for coordinating, it is not only possible, but would be a very fruitful use of our resources to start to question the money system, which is so big. It is bigger than any one person's life. It is more contentious than religion, than politics. And I think it would help people to say, this container that we exist in, it makes a lot of choices for us. Most people assume they have to get a job because they got to pay rent, because they got to buy groceries. But wouldn't it be better if there was a way to distribute Earth's resources so that everybody could experience the fullness of life? And, the example I like to use for that is, let me say first, it's about values. When you are a fish, what's that saying? You're a fish and you're judging yourself by your ability to climb a tree, then of course you'll see yourself as a failure. If you walk into the store and all you see are Skittles and M&Ms, you might buy one, never knowing that a Reese's cup is out there and is even better. You know what I mean? Like, the container you live in makes a lot of choices about your life that you don't even get to see. And the money system is built on values of scarcity and competition that are arbitrary. I said it before, the Earth's resources are limited, but they are abundant, meaning there is enough for all of us and many more. The question becomes, how do we, when the system of scarcity and competition is so pervasive, how do we start to imagine what a system built on different values might look like? And it starts with values of abundance, values of cooperation. And from there, we can build models that put that forward. And it's tough because we live in a container of scarcity and competition. We live in a container where money is the easiest way to get food from the grocery store legally. And it's probably not feasible for everybody to just go, dig a hole for water and go live in the woods and wipe their butts with pine cones. But there is a world where we have tools to build alternative models of resource distribution. And I think that's the phase we're at. I think it's important for people interested in the future, for humans, the more than human world, to coordinate about how to share our resources, or we will fight for them. And I'm not sure who's listening, but I would be willing to guess that most people, the people with the power to change that future the most, are not listening. There is an uneven power. It's not that, it's us and them, but some people have a lot of power and they have a vested interest and an incentive in maintaining the way things are, because the way things are benefits them. It's not that they're bad people, but, they want things to stay this way. So I think it's important for us to think about what different models could look like. And I personally think that cryptocurrency, the tools that make it possible, artificial intelligence, the internet, will be the best tools to solve this problem that is ultimately a problem of human values. How do we come together, all of us? And how do we build systems that incentivize us to see we are all more alike than we are different? We are all together at every level.
That's so deep. There's so many layers to peel back. For me, I do believe that wealth is almost like a triangle, right? You have your physical wealth, your financial wealth, but you have a spiritual wealth and a physical wealth. And within me and my own friend group, we have the three F's. It's faith, finance, and fitness. And as long as you are excelling in all three of those, you're probably going to have a better life. And if one of those are lacking, then I think everything else starts to struggle. In a world where people define their success by the amount of physical wealth that they've developed, how would you define wealth for yourself? I know for me, my goal is not to have X amount of millions, but it's to own 100% of my time. How would you define wealth for yourself? What does success look like for you?
I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I would say the ability to fully experience life. And what I mean by that is, if you're, the ability for every person to have their needs met and then give back to themselves and other people. I think, maybe an example will help. are you familiar with Lin-Manuel Miranda, the guy who wrote Hamilton the musical? He did the soundtrack for a couple of Disney movies. You know who he is?
I know Hamilton, but I don't know
Okay.
the
Let's
name.
say like Elvis Presley. You know who Elvis is? So I think most people would agree that in a world where Elvis could have been a doctor, could have been a train conductor, could have been a teacher, a custodian, it is probably that most other professions would have been less fulfilling for him and less fulfilling for everyone. Now, you could get real contentious and argue, but let's just assume that our greatest joy is found and the world's greatest need is met when Elvis is an entertainer. It is circumstantial and serendipitous that he became an entertainer. But whether you are Elvis Presley or you're a mother who wants to be able to feed your kids and nurture them and spend time with them, I think everyone is best served when all of us have the freedom to explore what is this thing that I am uniquely positioned and qualified to do at this moment. Maybe it changes throughout your life. I'm very fortunate that from a very young age, my earliest memories of the world are of being delighted with entertainers and seeing through the help of teachers, parents, encouragement, opportunities to express and cultivate that gift, that this was something that deeply satisfied me and deeply satisfied and fulfilled others when I was able to do it. Not just because I made them laugh or cry or whatever, but because it was something that drew me and other people around me into a deeper understanding of themselves, each other, and what it meant to be human. And I think it's a tragedy that because we define wealth as like dollars and cents, somebody who would give the world more by nurturing their children or writing the next great American musical would choose to go to even medical school. Like, if Elvis had been a children's doctor, could he have saved countless lives? Sure. But what a tragedy it would have been for all the wealth we would have missed if he had done anything else. And so that's what it means to me. The freedom to fully experience life is for each person to have their needs met, and then the freedom to pursue whatever it is that uniquely the spark inside them can illuminate for themselves and the rest of us. The world then would not just be a dark place with bright spots. It would be a light in the universe. And I think that's something that is, money is holding us back from.
It's
It's nobody's
unique.
fault. But
It's such a precious perspective because I think that most people tend to enjoy that slower living outside of the United States and definitely outside of New York. New Yorkers have that go, go, go mentality and they just focus on how many commas. They don't necessarily enjoy the sunsets. There's a lot of things they just I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. It's a very refreshing mentality when you realize that there is much more out there to offer you fulfillment and success in this life rather than what toys am I buying this year?
dude, and I resonate with the slow life so much. And I'd actually really like to ask you, when you think of wealth, like slow life is probably part of it, the freedom of time. But I would like to hear you elaborate more on that because I'd love to know, what is wealth for you?
It really is just 100% ownership of my time. What you decide to do with that time, I think, is just as important as actually obtaining that access to that time, because time is probably the most important form of currency. You'll find any 80-year-old billionaire that's looks at a young kid with envy. That's probably one thing that a billionaire doesn't have is that time. So what you decide to do with that time, I think, matters, and the way that you decide to go about it ultimately dictates the fulfillment I believe that you do have in your life. I don't necessarily like the idea of obtaining wealth in terms of financial. If you don't own your time, like I always see the example, what's the point of wearing that Rolex if it still tells you what time to take your coffee break, your lunch break?
Yeah. I have a tweet. It used to be pinned in my profile. I don't tweet much, but I was driving one day and I was thinking about that phenomenon and I had my arm up on the steering wheel and I thought it was like cheeky and clever. It's whatever. But I took a picture of my wrist and I said, there are some billionaires who will never be able to afford this watch because this is as free as it gets, man.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
and I think what you decide to do with that time is ultimately what would define success. For me, I think it's impact, and it's probably for most people, it's impacting lives. in one way or another.
I
Now,
think
I don't
so.
really know if what I'm doing here is impacting lives. I would hope that even if there's just one person listening and they obtained one thing from this interview between you and me, and they walked away and they went to bed tonight and they learned one thing, I think that small steps makes big ripples in the world. You don't necessarily have to save lives, but just the uh, planting the seed of a question or the perspective on a whole new way to walk upon life, I think is enough to change the world. It's one conversation at a time. It's one person at a time. So I think it's what you do with that time is just as important, and I think that it's the people that you touch that is how you define success.
Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
personally.
I agree. And, we're very fortunate, I think, to live at a time in history when most people have more time, just by the numbers, all of us have a greater life expectancy than pretty much anybody, pretty much any time in the history of humanity. And it is precious, but everybody has the opportunity, wherever you are, whatever your circumstance, to make the most of any amount of time. We all have the opportunity to do something, even if it's just to be present and appreciate. I think you said, the sunset is a moment of beauty, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's more important now than ever in a world of distractions, right? TikTok, brain rot, Netflix, football. There's a lot of distractions in life that maybe give you this false sense of accomplishment. This cheap dopamine is what I like to call it. And don't get me wrong, I like to relax, but there's moments where I'm doing something that I know is a waste of my time, and I may enjoy doing it, but I know that I'm not producing anything. It's not bringing me anything closer um, to my goals or something that I feel like I need to achieve. And it makes me feel kind of bad about myself when I am kind of doing something that I have somewhere to be. I have something to achieve, and if I'm distracted by things, then I feel like I'm distracted by things.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you kind of beat yourself up, but I feel like not many people they're okay with the distraction. So I feel like ever since I was a teenager, I would try always to peel back the eyelid and show people that sometimes there is a man behind the curtain. There are things that are going on beyond the surface level, whatever the media is telling you. Regardless of it, there is something much deeper than it. Don't abide by the distractions, and that seeking of truth, I think, is so important that whether it's crypto or whether it's religion or politics or whatever the case is, when you have that characteristic about you that you want people to see the truth and to see past the distractions, because I honestly believe 90% of the population is distracted. That in and of itself is a bigger job than what most people would tend to believe. So I think even in my own friend group and even on here, I try to bring people's attention away from the distractions and to show them something that's actually worth paying attention to. And that sometimes is very difficult to do, is to realize what is the truth and what is the lies in a world of lies and distraction.
Yeah, I definitely fall into the trap of trying, by which I mean trying to persuade people, trying to communicate something, trying to argue, trying to, instead of just being. I think the most persuasive thing a person can do is to be. Instead of arguing, there is a better way, live it and let people see whether it is true or false by your example. And that is a more compelling thing than I told you so. And here are three reasons why. you know,
Yeah, absolutely. Leading by example is probably one of the most powerful ways. I think it's probably the only way that people actually can maybe understand what it is that you're trying to target.
yeah. And it sounds trite. Somebody in the comments said yogi talk, but I think it's true.
It is, and I think that that's the basic fundamentals of any type of characteristic trait is trying to understand what someone's motives are, and exactly like how much of it are they bothered by the distractions, or how much of the truth are they truly trying to seek, or are they comfortable in the distractions? I'd like to jump into our next topic, Evan. Um, Within our entire space, right, we're sitting at a little less than a $4 trillion market cap. Do you still believe that we're early, right on time, or are we late?
Oh, we're so early, dude. We are so early because most people have no idea how crypto works. They have no reasonable solution. The tools they use. I routinely talk to people who are like, what's a wallet? How does it work? And which wallet should I get? Is a wallet even safe? And I got this ledger, but it doesn't work for my tokens. I got this Arculus, but I can't make it work on my phone. This ledger's great, but I can't see the numbers on the screen. You know what I mean? Like there are so many barriers to most people using this stuff, even at an elementary level. And again, because crypto is going to be so much more than currency, I don't know if you've seen recently, have you seen the tokenized card trend with Courtyard, and there was another one that released the card token. Essentially, it's a real world asset play where they are custodying Pokemon and other kinds of collectible cards, and they're issuing non-fungible tokens to give them more velocity. Like one of the problems of trading cards is like, I got to know you, or I got to, pay eBay a 10% fee to buy your card. Then you got to pack it up and ship it to me. I mean, there's all this friction to collectors being able to do what they love. But wouldn't it be easier if anyone on the internet could just send the money using crypto rails, no fees, directly to another person? Maybe the platform takes a minimal cut for facilitating, and they get a token that represents the card. Maybe it's got a beautiful digital image, and at any time they can choose to say, hey, Courtyard, send me the real thing. And they'll take it out of a vault, they'll send it to you. It's an audible process. And there's another company I just learned about called Charizard Capital that is buying up Charizard cards and creating tokens for them. And now you can take them and like swap them for stable coins because there's a valuable asset behind them that's going to appreciate in time. Take that and go put it in a liquidity pool, or take out a loan, or whatever. I mean, the things we are going to do with crypto. Polymarket is such a good example. I cannot wait. I think there's a great opportunity for a news disruption. Nobody trusts mainstream media, right?
Yeah, right.
And Polymarket or tokens, not necessarily number go up tokens, but imagine if we were part of a news network like TikTok, where everybody had a verified credential. When I say verified credential, I just mean a blockchain-based ID. My TikTok account, people can copy it. It's hard to enforce the copycats and the scammers. Everybody watching this understands what a problem that is. And it would be awesome if I had a verified credential that could attest to things about me using cryptography to make them at once provable and private. So I could prove, for example, that I was a White House aide. You wouldn't know my name though, but you could prove it. And if I, as a member of this network who was a White House aide, uploaded a picture of Bill Clinton kissing Monica Lewinsky, first of all, that is the first source. It is a primary source. It is verifiable. And then if CNN wants to post that story, they got to credit me. Maybe they got to pay me a fee to use it because it's my intellectual property, not the picture or the act, Bill Clinton, whatever. It is the story. It has become tokenized. It has a tangible form. Now the moment can be sold, it can be transferred, or it can be a credential that attests to me forever. We're going to get faster, more credible news. If I 1 week post that picture and then the next week post a picture of a cat on the moon, then like, okay, well, this guy's probably full of shit. And my ability to be credible to the platform either increases or deteriorates over time. And how would that disrupt the entire news industry? And there's no shit token attached to it. You know what I mean? Like, these are the kind of things crypto is going to do that are going to not only capture parts of markets that exist or expand the value of markets that exist, but that are going to create new markets entirely that will be possible to measure in money, but difficult to capture the value of with money. That's how we're going to evolve our ability to, I say, make meaning in this new medium.
Wow. So you could even bring that to a whole new level of accountability, even just in terms of what is true and what's not. Like you're saying, in news sources, there is no accountability with it. It's almost like they can lie on the news. They can manipulate the information that they are relaying to you. But that's amazing. You would be able to have something that would be you would be able to verify the validity and the trustworthiness of the source, and all of that is protected on the chain.
Yep, that's exactly right. And there are just tons of applications for this. Sarah in the comments says that our identity will be NFTs. And that is a great application, but it can go so much further. Imagine if we had a system of identity where we had NFTs issued for things like, I live in Memphis. And then what if there were other tokens on top of it? One of the things that's assigned to me that we're so early is that we ask one token to do too many things. If they launched a Memphis token today, I guarantee you it would be like minted in a smart contract by City Hall, and they would have weird rules. It'd be a buyable token. It'd be fungible. And, the mayor would get 1 million of them, and he'd probably be able to dump them or whatever, or there'd be a venture capital. But imagine instead, everybody who lived in Memphis got a non-fungible token that attested to you live in Memphis, you rent, you own property. All these different things we could verify and attach to that token over time. And what if we also had a fungible token that we could airdrop to people in the city? What if we had a Memphis rent token that was issued every year, and it was hyperinflationary? So from the second it's issued, it starts losing value. But there's money attached to it because we have grants and things in Memphis. But the problem is the money doesn't go to the people who need it the most. What if your Memphis rent token was airdropped to your NFT, and it was based on the neighborhood you lived in, how expensive your rent was relative to your income and relative to the average in the city? And if you were paying way more rent comparatively than your neighbor based on how much you made and how expensive it was, you get more tokens. And anybody can buy in, but you are unlocked tokens first. So the people who need the most help can sell those tokens and capitalize on it. And they can be used at different stores with the government to pay your taxes. And other people could buy in. People from Miami could speculate on it, and it would add value to people in Memphis. People who vote in their election could get another kind of token that is designed another way. It's a whole new medium, and it's infinitely programmable. But we're sitting here thinking about, how much does it cost? Is the price going to go up? I mean, it's like, I don't know. I don't know how to make it clearer to people that this is possible right now. And meanwhile, people are still launching tokens on Pump.Fun. I get it. I know why they're doing it. There's money to be made right now. But would you rather take $10 today or be the person who had that idea and everybody loves you for it tomorrow?
I'm going to ask you to create a whole new playlist. We're going to call this Visions with Evan. And it's all these hypothetical things that somebody can take these ideas, and we're going to copyright it somehow. We're going to issue a token that you're going to get your respect. But
I have a contract for this. I have a smart contract for this where I just create non-fungible tokens that have a JPEG attached to them, where I put in the metadata, just a description of the idea. And then I, put the idea on chain. I have many of them, and I always am talking to people about them and giving them away, because some people are like, why do you talk about that publicly? First of all, because I don't have time for all these things. Second of all, I want the social capital. I want someone to say, oh, I heard that idea from Evan first. And third of all, if it comes to fruition in the world, it would be good for me. And everybody who hears about it, maybe not everybody, but with an NFT attached, when that system becomes mature, everybody's going to know that the only way you can get another idea like that is if you come to me. So it's good. I don't know. I will do that. I will honor that. But first, that's why the work I do now is oriented around helping everyone go from 0 to 1. So many people don't know how to use crypto safely, confidently. And I want to get them all. I want to do everything I can professionally to help everybody get there. And then it'll be easier for me to say, check out this idea, and have people be like, oh, I get it. You know what I mean? Because if I talk about that, they're like, wait, why does Bitcoin have value? You know, which I get, but it's a journey.
Visions with Evan, new playlist coming soon. Maybe we'll get a Netflix sponsorship of just the podcast. I know that we're coming down a little bit short on time. I'd like to jump into some rapid fire questions with you, if I could.
Of course.
You are 100% a tea drinker, but I don't really know. Is it coffee, tea, or energy drinks?
Coffee in the morning. Tea before I sing. I prefer Throat Coat, which I believe is by Herbal Essentials, and pretty much water the rest of the time.
What is one word that your friends would use to describe you?
Weird, optimistic, kind, probably unique. Interesting, maybe. I don't know.
So you have the morning show. You could talk about it a little bit, but are you also a night owl?
More than I'd like to be. I would like to be a person who goes to bed early and wakes up early, but often I find myself in adventures after dark.
What do you think is the most underrated token right now?
Tokens that do things like that are beyond dollars and cents' ability to measure, that mostly haven't been invented yet. One example is, not right now, but as a concept of this, I know this is rapid fire. Go look up Marat Pack. Just type PAK into your internet search engine, PAK NFTs. If you want to see an example of what smart contracts can do that I think is super ahead of its time. He was big. They were big. I don't know if it's a he, they're anonymous, a couple years ago, and they've been kind of silent for a couple of years. But the things they made tokens do were the kind of things that helped me understand what this medium could become. PAK, pack.
Cosmic brought up a great one. Hairspray. What's your hair routine?
Don't wash it too much. Most people with hair like mine wash their hair too much and it becomes dry and frizzy. You know, shower regularly, scrub your scalp, shampoo when you need to, and then moisturize, baby. Get a good conditioner.
Do you trust stablecoins? Yes or no?
Yes. Depends on the stablecoin,
Okay.
but yes.
If all exchanges shut down tomorrow, what is your first move? What's your next move?
That's a great question. I'd be grateful, first of all, that most of my Bitcoin is in self-custody. If exchanges shut down tomorrow, my first move would be, I don't know. I wouldn't be too worried about it. I'd figure it out. It would be a big enough problem that we would have to figure it out together. And my first move would probably be to, learn about it and make a video to let people know it's going to be okay and how.
That's a great answer. What is one technology you think is going to be dead in 10 years? Or even one use case that's not applicable in 10 years?
Pennies are going away. I'd like to say money as a whole. I don't think it's happening that soon. That's a really good question. I don't have a better answer.
Do you remember the funniest question or reply that you ever got from a beginner?
Man, these are such good questions. Oh man, I wish I had prepared. No, I don't. Maybe for the love of God, man, why don't you have a shirt on?
That's a great one. Where's the shirt, Evan? If crypto was a movie genre, what would it be? Comedy, thriller, or sci-fi?
It would be a superhero movie.
Why?
Because the tokens, they have different superpowers. Bitcoin has this sort of power of immutability. They are kind of like Avengers for fairness for the common man or woman. And it's an underdog story where, unlike a lot of other transformational technologies, for the first time, the people whose hands were gifted with this light were not the politically powerful, the kings, the rich. It was everyday, there were tech nerds, but they were blue collar people, or they gave it to blue collar people, and blue collar people have access to it. Anybody with an internet connection can use this. And I think it's a very powerful story of receiving a gift as an everyday person, having a responsibility to share it, and then shining that light to the rest of the earth. That's very much where the name Rise Up comes from, is this idea that, when we learn together, share what we know, we can help each other to rise up.
It's a great analogy, Evan.
Thank you.
What do you think is harder, teaching DeFi to a 20-year-old or Bitcoin to a 7-year-old? Let me change that. DeFi to a teenager or Bitcoin to a 7-year-old?
I think teaching DeFi is harder, period.
Regardless of the age.
Regardless of the age. I think teaching DeFi is harder because Bitcoin is such a foundation. It's the first place I go. Maybe after stablecoins, but it's easier. I have to teach you about Bitcoin before I teach you about DeFi. I don't have to, but I find it's much easier to explain a lot of concepts of cryptocurrency with Bitcoin and then teach people about DeFi once they understand some of the basics.
I got two more for you.
Okay.
What is your favorite aha moment when teaching crypto?
That other people have or that I had?
That other people have, that you could see when they finally grasp it. One analogy that usually gets people.
I think my favorite right now is public and private keys. The concept that your crypto doesn't physically exist. The only place it lives is on a ledger we all share, like a common checkbook, the blockchain. And that it does not get sent, stored, received, transferred, but that it is information which is digital and is reassigned. I think that's my favorite unlock, is when somebody gets that, then they can start to imagine what it might be possible to do in this new medium.
And here's the final one for you, brother. If you had to explain crypto to a 5-year-old in one sentence, go.
A 5-year-old? Um, Freedom. Maybe I wouldn't even use the freedom. I would say, damn, I'd really have to know the 5-year-old, but I'd say,
Crayons, brother. I don't know.
no, one sentence. Yeah, crayons, brother. That'd be it. I'd drop the mic and walk away. I would say, uh, sharing the world with others on
Yeah.
computers,
Sure.
something like that.
Evan, do you have any closing thoughts or statements you'd like to say to the people about you, your story, the future, any high hopes, beliefs?
Sure. I will say, thank you. Thanks to all the friends in the comments. I see Wall Street. I see Amsfar. Is Sarah your moderator?
No, but she's a great moderator.
I see her moderating for a lot of people, and I know she's helped a lot of folks have safer lives. She's been giving gifts all night. I see Cosmic is here. Many people that I've come to consider friends or that I've come to recognize and hope to get to know better. And I want to say thank you for the time. It's your most valuable asset, maybe after your reputation, for the trust you put in me to help you learn. And I would simply encourage everybody by reminding them that the most important thing I think anybody in crypto can do right now is to tell a better story about what blockchain, cryptography, Bitcoin, what it actually is, and why it might matter to everyday people like us. Meeting them where they are, not trying to change their minds, not taking it personally if they don't understand, but helping to model one way that this could be good for the future. When they hear about FTX, remind them of Bitcoin. When they hear about Mt. Gox or whatever, you name it, the Trump rug pull, I don't know. When they hear about a thing that makes them fearful, uncertain, if they get scammed, then be that person who can help them find a better story, because it's up to all of us. And this is technology that everybody's going to use. It's the next version of the internet, and we're early to it. So we want to be good stewards, hospitable, and help people to get in touch with a better experience, because right now their experience with it sucks. And then can I just tell people where they can find me? Is that fine?
Absolutely, yes, please.
I saw someone ask if I go live. Sometimes I go live on my own, but mostly I go live with my colleagues. And the easiest place to find all of the stuff that I do is here in my profile. If you're watching this in the future on YouTube or somewhere else, then you can just search Conversations with Evan, or you can go to RUMS, RUMSHQ.com to find all the resources that the folks at Rise Up Media have created. We're here to help everyday people get in touch with a better story about crypto. It's a place you can ask your questions, share what you know, learn and grow with others. We've got several live shows we do every week on all your favorite socials. You can catch up with recordings on your favorite podcast platform. We have a free to join community where you can ask a question, where you can get a second opinion. We've got live and recorded courses. And I will say, watch out for the start of the year. We're going to have a new learning experience that a lot of people have asked for, which is like a cohort. We're going to take, a couple dozen people from zero to confident crypto user over about 8 weeks. You'll have like one class a week. You'll discuss with your friends, and you'll be paired up with people based on your interests and your specific situation. You'll get a mentor who is somebody we have known for years, who will help you, get you in touch with good resources, and you'll be learning. The best thing anybody who wants to learn crypto can do is get into a chat, a community, a relationship with other people who are using this stuff well, who aren't going to try and sell you some investment. Relationship with other people who are using this stuff well, who aren't going to try and sell you some investment, but can help you save time and money by avoiding scams and taking like a shortcut to where they had to, hack a path to get to. And again, the link is RUMS, RUMSHQ.com. I would love to see you in our community, and you're welcome in my comments anytime. If there's something I can do to support you and you too, Blockchain Bully, please let me know. I really appreciate the time, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Guys, please give Evan and all of his colleagues a follow with every platform that he does. He has awesome content, awesome educator. Evan, I want to say thank you for being a part of my story and teaching me something, as well as the people that are listening. I think you're doing a wonderful, wonderful thing for this community, and I'm really excited to see what the next 5 years looks like with you in it.
Thank you, my friend. I really appreciate it.
All right. Good night.
Bye for now.